Hello, everybody. This is Lab 2, Charge Tapes Revisited, from my Physics 2212 lab. For the introduction, the reason for completing this experiment is to determine the amount of force a line of charges will generate and behave compared to using the singular point charge, which we did in the previous lab. We will discuss how the line of charges exhibits a greater magnitude of charge than just a specific point charge. The key concepts to focus on in understanding what exactly is going on in the lab is Coulomb's law, which you can see in the bottom, and the attractive and repulsive properties, as well as the equation right here, as well as Newton's second and third laws, which will explain how the mass or how the tape is kind of moved and why acceleration doesn't occur after the tape is exposed to originally. So as for the setup and initial conditions, all of the physical calculations were found in the first lab with the initial conditions written as follows. This is because the tape experiment did not have to be repeated. The only difference in this portion is that we're treating the tape like it has line charges all throughout the tape instead of just a point charge on the surface. And so you can see we have our K and G values, and then the mass, distance, and the Q is just coded in and copied directly from the previous lab. Taking a look at the coding now, you could see our original estimated values as well as our E field being defined here on the left. And this is basically just creating the electric field from the bottom piece of tape onto the top piece. And you can see that's why we're returning E. And this is simply just coding in the E field equation that we discussed prior. And now looking on the right side, you can see that we are defining our line charge, which is basically going to break the tape into multiple segments and distribute the charge evenly across them. And this is the main differentiator in this lab versus the previous lab, as all of these sort of different segments of tape having a charge will allow us to draw contrast between treating it like a point charge. And here on the bottom, you could look at the top tape and bottom tape defined, as well as the E-scale. Now, on the next page, you can see that this part, this for loop that we have, and then working down until here is basically creating the electric field onto the top tape, and then taking that electric field and multiplying it by the charge of the top piece to get the total force. That's exactly the equation where you take your E field and then just multiply by the charge of the top tape, and that'll generate the total force since it goes from a point charge to now a total force. On the bottom, you can see that we have the position as well as print statements for when we finish the lab, and they should output the values, which we'll see on the following slide. So having a look at the result, we can see that the forces are nearly equivalent, and you can see that in this diagram as here's the blue, here's the red, and then all of these point charge arrows on top of it. It can look kind of clustered, but these are all individual arrows. And the forces are very close to equivalent, which indicates why the tape does not have further acceleration. Since if we treat force equals mass times acceleration, then greater kind of force applied over time will result in more acceleration. But if the force applied is constant, then we should just result in a single amount of acceleration, which is why the tape remains motionless and suspended since the net force is not changing. Taking a look at our potential errors and assumptions that we used throughout the life of the lab, we could see that one assumption was that the charge is assumed to be evenly spread across a tape. This isn't necessarily always true, as when you bring another piece of tape close, infinitesimally small pieces of tape could be closer to the top tape than the bottom, no matter how much you try. And number two is the forces are equal to each other as all other sources of force are ignored, including the friction and air resistance. Friction and air resistance are very real, and they would represent another force to be accounted for if we could measure those. And as for errors, really just human measurement could have been an issue from lab one, and this would have resulted in calculation error since the tape was moving slightly, depending on which part of the tape you were bringing closer. Having a look at the discussion questions. Number one, what if there was a point charge? What if the charge was a point charge? Then what will actually happen is that the charge on the tape would be smaller. This is because the point charge from the last lab, which gave us a much smaller calculated value than in this lab by almost a magnitude of 2 times, somewhere around 3 times 10 to the negative eighth versus 1.6 times 10 to the negative eighth. And why do these estimates differ and what is likely to be the true value? The point charge model will only work if you pretend all of the forces will just go in the positive y hat direction, while the line charge has multiple points throughout the tape, on the bottom and top, and across the whole part of the top of the tape. So the line charge is more likely to be correct. Thank you for watching, and that is my lab 2.